Simone. Good morning, everybody. Glad to have you online with us this morning. And first of all, I want to say thank you for your interest in serving on a nonprofit board. It is, I think, a labor of love in a lot of ways. Sometimes more labor than love, but definitely it's service that comes from the heart. So I hope that this session provides you with information you need in order to become a strong board member and help the nonprofit organization that you care most about succeed in meeting their mission. So I'm going to share my screen. And Simone, if you could just give me the thumbs up that you can see it okay, that would be great. Okay, perfect. So this morning, we're going to talk about what you should know before joining a nonprofit board. So we're going to look at the nonprofit world and where these organizations fit in, the roles and responsibilities of the board and of individual board members, what board service really involves, what you can expect as a nonprofit board member, and then how to truly set yourself up for success as an incoming nonprofit board member. So throughout this session, please feel free to ask questions, as Simone mentioned, either in using the chat feature or the Q&A, and Simone will ask me those questions as they come up. Bring up some real world examples that you might have. And then, as always, challenge what you are hearing. We learn best from one another. So please go ahead and ask questions, challenge the materials, and hopefully we can get to a good outcome as a group. So let's go ahead and start with understanding the nonprofit world. For those of you who might be new to nonprofits, this is really how they are different from the for-profit world. So a nonprofit is created to serve a mission, not to generate a profit. And any surplus that is created by the programs or revenue is reinvested into the programs, not distributed to owners. And there are various types of nonprofits, and they live under IRS Code Section 501c3. That is a true nonprofit organization. You also might see 501c6, which is like our chambers fall into that area. But that 501c3 designation is typically where you would see most of the nonprofits that you're working with. So bottom line, nonprofit doesn't mean no revenue, it means no private profit. And one of my favorite sayings when it comes to this is nonprofit is a tax status, not a business model. So please, as a nonprofit organization, feel free to make profit and then reinvest it into your programs. So nonprofits work because they have a mission in mind. And this mission is the North Star that guides everything that the nonprofit does. It is always central to what the organization is and how it delivers its services. The programs are how that mission is delivered directly into the community. Funding comes from grants from foundations like Manatee Community Foundation or Bishop Parker Foundation, donations from individual donors or corporations, contracts that might be in place, and earn income that can sustain the work. There are a lot of nonprofits in our community, especially who have gone through the No Margin, No Mission program of the Patterson Foundation and do a great job of leveraging their services into earned revenue opportunities. And then the governing body of the nonprofit is the board. They oversee the organization, the mission, the strategic focus of the organization. Staff then manages the programs, and then the community is the ultimate beneficiary. So the nonprofit ecosystem, how all this works. Everything begins and ends with the community, what they need and their aspirations. And the community is not just served by the nonprofit, it's the reason the nonprofit actually exists. So listening to the community ensures that your programs remain relevant and impactful. So bottom line, the community is the why the nonprofit exists. Then you get into the board. The board sets the direction, ensures accountability, and safeguards the mission. They focus on the what and the why, the strategy, the resources, the impact, not, and I say that strongly, the day-to-day management of the organization. Their job is to keep the organization aligned with its purpose and financially sound. So you can think of the board as the compass of the organization. They always make sure that the nonprofit is headed in the right direction. Then you get down to your staff, your chief executive, your staff, your volunteers. They are the implementers and innovators. They are the ones who bring the mission to life, designing and delivering programs, managing finances, communicating with stakeholders. They focus on the how. So a healthy staff and board relationship is built on trust, clarity, and respect for each other's roles. So you can think of, if the board is the compass, the staff is the engine. They are the one who drives the organization forward, aligning with the direction of the board. So funding then provides the fuel for the organization. So nonprofits, like I said, can rely on a diverse funding stream. When you look at your sources of revenue as a nonprofit organization, you want to make sure that there is diversity, never relying on a single source, because you want to be sure that the organization can exist even if a specific source of revenue dries up. So these funding streams can come from grants, donations, events, and earn revenue. The board is responsible for ensuring financial sustainability and integrity, not just fundraising. And those donors and funders are part of this ecosystem. They are partners in the impact. So they provide the fuel that you need to make the impact. The programs are the expression of the mission. They are where the mission meets the community, the tangible outcomes of the other parts all working together. You want to make sure that these programs are evaluated regularly to ensure that they meet the community need and have the results that you are looking for. So when you think about this ecosystem, it is kind of like a motor with the community board, chief executive and staff, the funding and the programs all working together in harmony. So the difference between nonprofit and for-profit. A for-profit organization provides profit to the owners or shareholders, whereas a nonprofit, any surplus that they receive is reinvested in the mission. For-profit, the owners are the shareholders, whereas the nonprofit, the owners are the stakeholders in the community. For-profit has customers, the nonprofit has beneficiaries and donors. And in a for-profit world, the CEO or chief executive or executive director, you'll hear all three used interchangeably in the nonprofit world, but it means the chief staff leader. In a for-profit, that chief staff person is accountable to owners. And in a nonprofit, that chief staff person is accountable to the board. So what is the role of the board? Well, the board stewards the mission of the organization. They keep that mission as their North Star, as I said at the beginning. They ensure financial and legal integrity for the organization. They guide the long-term direction. And again, this is not focusing on the daily operations, but the overall goals, the strategic direction of the organization. And they represent the community's voice. So now that we know a little bit more about the difference between nonprofits and for-profits, how nonprofit works, our nonprofit organization works in its ecosystem, we can dive into the role and responsibilities of the board. But before we go on, I just want to make sure if there are any questions in the chat or in the Q&A, please feel free to ask them as we go along. I don't ever feel like it's an interruption, because if it's important to the topic that we're discussing, I want to make sure that we address it at that time. So get your keyboards out and be ready to type if you have any questions. Okay, so the first and foremost are the legal duties of a nonprofit board. And this is defined by state statutes, and it is consistent across the country. This is what the IRS bases minimum board performance on. So if you think of it that way, this is truly the bare minimum. It has nothing to do with ethics and values. It's really that basic level of abiding by the law. So duty of care means that you're using your best judgment when you come to a board meeting or serve in the role of a director. It doesn't mean that you have to be perfect or that you cannot make a mistake, just that you have exercised reasonable caution in making decisions. And as a trustee, you do that by asking good questions, attending meetings, participating in discussions, learning about the organization's programs, and reading materials and being prepared ahead of time. As a nonprofit board member, you'll soon realize, if you haven't already, that staff invests a lot of time in board meetings and making sure that board members have the information they need to make decisions ahead of time. And nothing is more demoralizing to a staff member that have a board member walk in and say, "Oh, I got the email, but I didn't have time to read that ahead of time." So make sure that you are fulfilling that duty of care as a board member so that you are ready to actively participate in decision making at the board table. Duty of loyalty means putting your personal and professional interests aside for the good of the organization. When you are sitting around the board table, the only hat you should be wearing at that time is the hat for the organization for which you are meeting. So you want to make sure that you disclose any conflicts of interest. That is how you exercise your duty of loyalty, and putting aside any personal agendas you might have. Now, in a small community, or really in any community, it's very difficult to avoid all conflicts of interest. And that certainly is not what I'm recommending, but it's critical to disclose them. And those should be disclosed annually. The organization that you are serving on a board for should have forms that you fill out so you can tell a little bit about where you work, any other nonprofit boards that you're serving on. And then if you do happen to enter into a board discussion where some of those disclosed conflicts come up, you can feel free to share information that you might have that is relevant to the discussion at the time, but you do want to refrain from voting or even leave the room if you feel that is necessary. So conflicts of interest happen. As long as they are disclosed, you're staying within the guidelines of the law. And finally, you have duty of obedience, which means you are staying true to the organization's mission. You're using funds for the purposes for which the organization was established. And it's also important that you are ensuring that the organization follows all laws and regulations that may apply to a nonprofit, such as filing your annual IRS Form 990, your annual report to the state of Florida Division of Corporations. So it's adhering to the mission, being obedient to the mission, as well as being obedient to any laws in which your organization operates. So now that we know the legal obligations, again, bare minimum, this is what is required by law. And this is why your organization will have D&O insurance to make sure that you are covered in case your board members do not follow the law. This is key, but now we're getting into some of the roles and responsibilities of the board. So these are where you get into some of those higher level board service, and this is really where you want to focus. So, nonprofit boards, no two are made alike. If you serve on one board, you will get to another board thinking you're going to see similar activities, and you will not. I can assure you, no two boards are the same. So, when you are thinking about your roles and responsibilities, they will apply differently depending on the organization where you are serving. So, number one, setting the strategic direction. So you want to make sure that as the governing body, you are defining the organization's long-term goals, their priorities, and their overall vision. So you are wanting to be sure that you have mission alignment with your strategies, that you have visions and goals in place, and that you are actively planning for the future. So the board should cooperate with staff in setting a strategic plan regularly. This might be a 1-year strategic plan, depending on the volatility of the sector in which you're working. It could be 2 or 3 years, but that strategic plan really should be aligned with your mission and vision and goals. and then set the stage for your operating plan and your budget. It all plays together in a really well orchestrated way. You want to also make sure that as the board is leading board operations, that there is a governance committee in place. The governance committee plays the role now of what the nominating committee might have been decades ago, but the governance committee is the only committee that solely focuses on the board and building, evaluating, and rotating the board. So that is a key feature. And for most nonprofit organizations, they are self-perpetuating boards, meaning that they vote on their own board members. So this is key because the people who you elect to serve on the boards will then be electing future board representation. So it is critical to make sure that board operations are well led. And this also means the operations at meetings, that discussions take place effectively, everybody has a chance to weigh in. The board is also responsible for ensuring the necessary human and financial resources, that you have a staff in place that allows for the growth of the organization and the achievement of your mission. You, as a board, will also evaluate the chief executive on a regular basis. That should be done annually. And then you also provide the budget that chief executive needs to build a staff that is able to operate the programs and ensure that the organization can meet its mission. Now, you also provide the financial resources, and that means that you have a finance committee in place. You might have a fundraising committee in place to be sure that the organization is able to carry out its mission through those fundraising activities. So the board will review and approve budgets, financial report, and policies. You're going to monitor that budget over time to make sure that the organization is operating within its financial means as well. If you are going to be part of an organization that has an endowment, you might have a separate investment oversight arm that monitors the long-term investments as well. So there could be a variety of ways in which you can play a role from the financial perspective. So then also providing oversight. This makes sure that you are evaluating your programs on a regular basis, that you are providing oversight when it comes to abiding by the ethical standards and code of conduct that you have for your organization. So these are the 4 key roles and responsibilities of the board. This is what they do when they serve together within board meetings. Now, there is a distinct difference between volunteers serving as board members in a governing role and volunteers serving in a support role, 2 completely separate hats. So as in the governing role, the board is responsible for providing oversight, managing the board activities and approving new members, hiring and evaluating the chief executive, and thinking strategically. Now, when you as a board member might also serve as a volunteer in different activities like fundraising, board recruitment, if you have some colleagues, work colleagues, or connections in the community that you think should be considered for board membership, please go ahead and actively recruit them. But keep in mind, you're doing that as a single board member, not as in your work functioning with the board as a whole. You also might be called on to advise the chief executive. This is outside of their evaluation, but just if you have particular expertise in a certain area where the organization is operating, the chief executive might call on you for that advice. And also, probably one of the most important roles as individual board members is to connect with the community. I always encourage you to, as board members, start identifying with organizations. So when you meet somebody for the first time, you introduce yourself as, "Hi, my name is Wendy. I am CEO of Bishop Parker Foundation. I'm also pleased to serve on the board of XYZ nonprofit." So it becomes part of who you are. And that's the way you get people to ask questions about your organization. And you, as a board member, can serve as an ambassador for that organization. So when you are serving as an individual board member, now this is your personal responsibilities. We talked about what the board does as a whole with setting the vision, providing oversight. This is what you are doing as an individual person as a board member. You're going to prepare for board meetings. As I said, it's really important that you allocate the time needed to make sure that you are reading materials ahead of time. If you have questions, you feel free to reach out to the chief executive before the board meeting and ask those questions. And if it's something that you feel wasn't answered effectively, then you could bring it up at the board meeting. Serve on committees. Many boards operate with committees that work underneath them. And one of the best ways you can learn more details about the organization is to serve on a committee. Or if you have a particular expertise in finance or in other areas or board governance, you might wish to serve on that committee. Alternatively, if you want to learn something more and you have a financial background and you say, I really don't want to serve on finance because I have to do that all day, but I'm really interested in board governance. I'd rather serve on the governance committee than on finance. Make sure you make that clear because you have a lot to add to an organization as a board member, and you want to make sure that your committee service is implemented in a way that works for both you and the organization. As an individual board member, you're always acting in the best interest of the organization. That goes back to conflicts of interest. Make sure that you put those aside, that when you are around that board table as an individual board member, that you are thinking solely about that organization. Another responsibility, and this sometimes makes people feel a little uncomfortable to talk about finances, but your responsibility is to make an annual, meaningful, personal financial contribution. So there's a lot of words there that could just say give, but I want to be very specific, and it really does need to be a meaningful, personal financial contribution. So this is not facilitating a gift from the corporation where you work. If they do have that as an opportunity, it really needs to come from your own personal finances and needs to be meaningful. Now, depending on the makeup of the board that you're on, there might be some people who really can't afford to make a gift at the level of others. And to them, it needs to be a personally meaningful gift. So if you're on a human services board and you have some individuals with lived experience to provide detailed information to the board that you wouldn't otherwise have access to, their personally meaningful gift might be $10 or $20 a year. But for others on the board, it could be $100,000. So really, it does need to be personal. It shouldn't be shared with anybody else. The only people that should know are the staff who manage the donor database and you. Another responsibility that you have as a board member is to help recruit and orient new board members. So you have a lot of connections in the community. You want to make sure that if you know somebody who has skills or particular interest in your organization's mission, who you think would be a terrific board member, make sure that you tell your chief executive or the chair of your governance committee, provide them their name, provide an opportunity to connect them with with your organization, have them go on a tour, invite them to an event, host a table at the organization's event, and bring all these people to them. So you're really bringing a lot to the organization with the connections that you have in the community. Okay, 5 more individual board member responsibilities. Supporting the chief executive. It is a lonely job. And the more that a chief executive hears positive reinforcements from the board, the happier they are, the more they feel connected with the board. So I strongly encourage you, when you receive an email from your chief executive, just reply and say, got it, thanks, great information, or ask questions if you have questions. But radio silence can be really difficult for that head leader of an organization. So just remember that it can be lonely at the top, and that any feedback you can provide is great, whether you have ideas for improvement or just want to give a pat on the back. Now, if all you're coming with are ideas for improvement, you might want to just take a step back and make sure that they're really necessary. It's good support and just reminding them that they're doing a good job when you can. Advocating for the organization. If you have connections in county government or state government, or even at the national level, you can support the work of the nonprofit by advocating for that sector and making sure that you do connect the staff leadership with key decision makers in those areas. Disclosing your conflicts of interest annually. If you are selected to serve on a board and you're not asked to do this, please ask the organization to start doing this. It's something that is required by the IRS, so you want to make sure that that's done. Stay informed about the organization, and I should add here, and the sector. So it's not just about understanding the work that your nonprofit is doing, it's also how they live within the sector in which they're operating. So if you have a nationwide affiliate group for that particular kind of work, sign up for their emails, go to their conferences if you can, just to try and learn as much as you can, because that really does help in decision making. And then assist where you can by providing that expertise. So to sum this section up, strong boards, and you'll know it when you see them, are mission focused and forward looking. They keep that mission front and center. When I work with organizations, I encourage them to put their mission statement on the agenda, on every board meeting agenda, so that you can be sure that as a board member, when you are making decisions at those meetings, that they are aligned with your mission. And if your organization's mission is too long to fit on the front page of your agenda, then maybe it's time to revisit the mission. It should be 2 to 3 sentences at most describing who the organization is and what they do. Should be very simple. And I love challenging board members. So you're part of XYZ nonprofit. What's the mission? And if they can't recite the mission, then I encourage them to memorize it. It's good to always have top of mind. Strong boards partner effectively with staff leadership. They are very clear on the roles, where the board's roles begin and end, and where staff roles begin and end. A lot of times you will see boards who engage in micromanagement, because it's much easier sometimes to decide on the color napkins we're going to have at the gala, than it is to really set a bold strategic agenda for an organization. On the other side, you will sometimes see staff micro-governing, and you want to watch out for both. So when staff has far too large of a role in the direction that the board is heading, and when you hear staff's voice more than you hear the board's voice at meetings, you want to think, is there a little bit too much micro-governing going on with this organization? So in the healthiest boards, you will find that effective balance. Strong boards also ensure the financial health of an organization and are transparent. Your donors are interested in your 990s. I can go on the giving partner right now and see 990s for all, I think it's 700 organizations in our region. So make sure that you are being very transparent with the organization's financial health. And also, strong boards evaluate themselves regularly. And by regularly, this could be at every meeting. You might want to have a board meeting evaluation that gets sent out to the board members after each meeting. Did we advance our mission? Were all voices heard? Did we have the materials that we needed to make good decisions? So always looking at how you can do things better creates a continuous learning organization, and that's one that tends to have a stronger board. Now, on the flip side, some red flags. Here is what you want to look out for as a potential new board member. Ask about attendance at board meetings. If you're not seeing that they are close to 100% attendance, that might be a red flag for you. And also, are board members showing up for events and other activities of the organization? If you're invited on a tour and as a potential board member, and the only people who are there are staff, Ask, were their board members invited? And if so, why they didn't show up. I already covered this. Micro-governing or micromanaging means those unclear boundaries. And like with a strong board, you'll know it when you see it. With this kind of board, you'll know it when you see it. Unclear financials or lack of transparency. If you ask for their annual budget and it takes 10 days for you to see it, that's a red flag. And then finally, no term limits or no orientation. We just did a session on orientation yesterday that Simone's going to be making available on the website. But you want to make sure that as a new board member, you are set up to succeed. And the best way to do that is by an effective orientation. Now, term limits. What is concerning about no term limits is that you have board members with life sentences. And while that may sound appealing to some people, it doesn't allow for new ideas to come into the organization, for people who have lived experience, recent lived experience to come into the organization. So if you are being asked to join a board, ask about term limits. Number one, do they have them? And then the follow-up question to that is, well, are they being followed? Because they might be in the bylaws, but just because they're in the bylaws doesn't always mean that they're being followed. So just keep in mind that if you start seeing some of these red flags, it's okay to decline a board invitation. Just because they ask doesn't mean that you have to say yes. They might not be ready for strong governance. And you want to be on the lookout for an organization that puts governance front and center, that the board truly understands what its roles and responsibilities are, and that has high expectations of its incoming board members. So if you get a feeling that it's not a strong board, or that you're being recruited for just your name or your checkbook, proceed very carefully. All right. So get out your keyboards if you have them nearby. So when you think about what a great board experience might look like for you, what do you think you might be on the lookout for as a potential new board member coming into an organization? And you can take your time replying. I will keep my eye on the chat if anything comes in, and we'll just keep moving on to the next section. So, oh, I missed that. Hold on. So what board service really involves? This is what you can be prepared for as a new board member. There will be time that you spend on meeting prep, committee work, events, attending events, and serving as an ambassador. So if you are being recruited by a board and you ask, well, how much time is involved? And they say, oh, don't worry, it won't take up a whole lot of time. Run, because they are lying to you. Really good board work should take time. This is an investment of your time. And it's why I recommend that people who are looking to serve on boards serve on 2, maybe 3 boards at a time. That's it. Because it does take time, it takes attention, and you want to be sure that you're able to give the organizations that time and attention that they deserve. You will be expected to bring your talent. That might be your expertise. That might be your talent as an expert networker or connector, or your talent as a problem solver. In any way that you are able to bring your talent, please do so for the board. I was part of an organization that had a board member who happened to be a maestro on the piano, and they brought their keyboard to some of our meetings and actually played music. So you never know where your talents might be used with an organization. So be ready to share all that you have. And then finally, your treasure. As I said, this is where your personally meaningful gift comes in every year. So you will be asked to give personally. You might be asked to give through your corporation if they have a matching gift program as well. And then also to make sure that you are connecting the organization to your contacts or donors who have the capacity to give. And this does not mean that you as a board member will be asked to ask your friends for money, because nothing would be more awkward than that, but that you do introduce your friends and contacts to the staff. You have professional staff, many of whom have certifications in fundraising, know how to make effective asks. Let them do the work that they are professionally trained to do, and you just bring the contacts to them. They can then take it from there. But then if they do give, what you should be doing as a board member is sending a lovely thank you note to those contacts so that they know how much you appreciate their investment in an organization that you care deeply about. So some of the comments that are coming in about what you're going to be looking for as a new board member is engagement, role clarity, excellent, and an organized structure open to new ideas. Super. Thank you for providing that feedback. I appreciate it. Was there anything else, Simone?
Yes, there was a question in the Q&A, and it's a good one. It's probably a little bit difficult, but what about the case where a board may not have those things but needs it and is looking for it, meaning like those red flags we were talking about? Maybe the
Uh-huh.
board is struggling getting new members, so it appears to have all the red flags, but they can't improve without more help and involvement. So if you're looking to kind of be like almost a savior, like what will be the next step, I guess, if you're looking to help them?
Well, in that case, I would recommend that you look for somebody who has governance expertise, because that's really what is needed, uh, and has been a successful board member elsewhere who is willing to take on a challenge. This is not an opportunity for a brand new board member who has never served in that capacity before. So I would bring on some people who have strong expertise in board management, and maybe even a consultant if you can get some financial support from a foundation to bring on capacity building support. I would recommend that. But it's the state statutes require a minimum of 3 board members. In the state of Florida, you have to have at least 3 board members at all times. So if you're getting close to that number, you want to make sure that you bring on additional people, but you don't want to expand in such a way that you double or triple that membership. 1 or 2 at the most at that time to help stabilize the organization would be the best bet. And if that doesn't answer your question and you have a follow-up, please go ahead and ask that, and we'll address that. Okay, so here are your 12 questions to ask before joining. And please don't ever feel bad about asking these questions. These are ones that an organization should be ready to answer for new board members. This is not anything that you are coming in with a list of ridiculous questions to ask. These are ones hopefully that should be answered ahead of time, but if not, you should ask going in. So what is the mission and how is it lived out? What is your impact and how are you measuring it? It's great to be able to feed, 500 kids every week, but what difference is that making in the community because you're feeding those 500 kids? Are they more likely to read on grade level? What is the larger impact because of that work that you're doing as an organization? What is expected of board members? How is the organization led? What are your staff and board dynamics? Can I see your bylaws and your articles of incorporation in your latest Form 990? Please do not ever join a board without having the bylaws and articles in front of you. You can always go to sunbiz.org to look at their articles of incorporation, but the bylaws are not typically public documents and might be harder for you to get. So ask for the bylaws, look through them, and ask if they have been reviewed recently and if the organization is abiding by the bylaws. This is really critical and something that is a definite red flag if the organization has, if they're 10 years old and they haven't pulled them out of the drawer since then. What is the required personal or fundraising contribution? What committees or working groups exist, and how do board members get involved? What are your terms, and are there term limits? What will my orientation look like, and what does ongoing education, what is provided by the organization? What is your financial health right now? Did you have a surplus or a deficit last year? What do you have in reserves? Are you anticipating a capital campaign? So all of those financial questions, please ask ahead of time so there are no surprises. How does the board evaluate its own effectiveness? A lot of boards are keen on evaluating the chief executive and making sure that gets done every year, which it should, but often don't want to look internally and evaluate themselves. And that's something that needs to be done as well. And this is the question that you ask yourself. How does this organization align with my personal values, skills, and priorities? So you want to find the right fit. And here is how you do that. You evaluate your passion against their purpose. Make sure there is alignment. Your skills against their needs. Why me? Why now? Why for this organization? What is it about me that you think I'm going to make a good board member? And make sure they have a really good answer for that in a place where you're going to fit. And then your values with their culture. If you are somebody who likes very disciplined meetings and wants things a certain way every time, do not be part of a board that tends to be a little more loosey-goosey. You will find that culture fit is often the most important key to success as a board member. So make sure that what you're looking for and where your values and comfort are align with their culture. And these are all things that you can figure out ahead of time. You should not be discovering this at your first meeting after you've already been selected as a board member. You can ask the several members of the board what the culture is. And if they're not able to verbalize the culture, then they probably haven't had that discussion. And if culture is important to you, then that's probably not a board where you would feel comfortable joining. So once you join, this is after the fact, learn the mission, the people and programs, memorize the mission, make sure that you might be the only board member who actually can memorize it, and then encourage others to do the same. Show up, read the materials, and ask questions. Be curious. There is nothing wrong with asking what you might think is a dumb question, because I can guarantee you that there are other people around the table who are thinking that question, but might not be willing to ask it. Serve on committees where you can add value and be an ambassador in the communities. Those are the 4 key things that you can do once you are added to a board. So here's another question for you. What expectations or questions would you want answered before saying yes to joining a board? Based on what we've discussed. And go ahead and start typing if you can. And that leads us, I saved 15 minutes for Q&A at the end, and that's where we are now. So I will turn the sharing off. And then Simone, if there are questions that come in, happy to answer them.
Nothing just yet, but there's some comments coming up the last question you asked.
Okay, great. Oh, so Emily said she's going to ask about the future of the organization, where they're headed and the direction. Great. CEO's tenure and future plans. Brilliant. Excellent question. Yeah, and you want to be sure that when you're joining an organization that there's stability and leadership. So I would follow up on that. If you ask about the CEO's tenure and future plans, then also ask, okay, well, given that you're going to be here for the rest of your career, if you win the lottery and leave, what is this transition plan? There might be a succession plan in place where there is an employee of the organization who, or several who have been identified as potential future leaders. But a succession plan isn't necessary if there isn't anybody there with the skills to step into that role. But what is essential is a transition plan. What do we do if they decide to run away with their lottery winnings and we have no CEO anymore? So you want to take that as a transition plan and then an emergency transition plan as well. What do we do if they don't come to work the next day? How are we going to run this organization? And that's a great conversation for the board to have. Okay, and Claire said she's going to ask what committees need support and can I review the bylaws? Thank you, Claire. I appreciate that. And then Kat said if there would be a board member orientation and how they evaluate themselves. And for some of these questions, you might get deer in the headlights look, and that's okay because we're all learning. We all have opportunities to grow. So if you have a checklist of 10 things that you're looking for on a board and they've checked 8 out of 10, you might decide, there's opportunity here. They meet most of what I'm looking for, but there are areas of improvement, and I will dedicate myself to helping this organization improve those 2 areas. But if you have a checklist of 10 and they only mark 2 of those, then that probably isn't going to be the organization that you want to join. Yes, so as a CPA, Erica, thank you. She always looks for their audit and 990. Tells me a lot of what I want to know about an organization. And that's a great point to bring up because a lot of times in your audits and your 990s, there is an opportunity for the organization to describe its programs and its services. And if you look through 2 or 3 years of 990s, because it's not just a financial reporting tool, I also say it's a marketing tool for organizations and they need to look at it that way. If they're not updating that narrative portion of their 990s, that would be a red flag for me because they're not staying current. They're not really reading through the 990. They might have somebody preparing it for them. And not to diss accountants, but accountants are not marketing professionals typically, and they don't think about how the 990 could be used to market to donors. So you want to make sure that those 990s are fresh with the latest information on programs in addition to the financial information. And thank you, Erica. And on the audit, if you want to pay attention to the notes section because anything that is of concern, if it's not enough to provide a qualified or unqualified opinion. Now I'm thinking back. Okay. If it's not enough to raise serious concerns about the audit, it will be in the notes and you can learn a lot about the financial health of the organization in those notes, even if you are not, if you don't have a strong financial background. So thank you.
And there was a mention about what type of insurance is required. I'm not sure if that was a direct question, but maybe talking a little bit more about that.
Yes, so every nonprofit organization should have directors and officers insurance. And that covers board members from individual liability should anything happen where those legal duties that we discussed earlier were not followed. So that protects you as a board member. And I probably should add that to the list of things to request when you're asking for the 990s and the bylaws and articles is a copy of the D&O insurance, because you should not accept a nomination to a board without ensuring that they have that D&O, directors and officers coverage. Good question.
Okay. Any final questions? We're coming up to the top of the hour, and so I just want to make sure you're with a professional and expert in this arena. So
Stump the
especially.
panel.
Right. Um, because I know we'll have our mixer on November 6th. So again, just to plug that again, that'll be a great time to, put all these questions to the test. Like I said yesterday to the nonprofits that were on the call with us, um, I would probably run away if someone was to say, hey, we want you to serve on our board today. I'm signing you up. That's not what that is all about. That is just more so to at least have an exchange to learn more about the organization, ask some of these key questions that Wendy brought up. And then hopefully the next step will be like, hey, well, let's go out to lunch. Let's go out to coffee and talk more about how we can work together, what that would look like. So just to level set, if anyone says, hey, we're signing you up for the board tonight, run away. That's what that is all about.
Well, and what we talked about yesterday in the orientation session is that the most effective boards follow a board building cycle where cultivation of potential board members is a year-round event. So for the governance committee at the nonprofit. So you might be invited to take a tour of the organization, and you might be invited to attend an event or be a part of a discussion that's taking place internally in the organization without the B word ever being mentioned. So, and that B word is board service. So you should be connected with an organization well before they ever ask you to serve on a board. So to Simone's point, if you have an email pop up in your inbox from an organization you've never had any connection to asking you to be a board member, I can just about guarantee you that they are not going to be your strongest in board governance. So just be careful. Make sure that it is a relationship that they're building with you, but you're also building with them, because you don't want to be in a situation where you say yes to an organization and you realize that it's a 2 or 3 year mistake. Because once you make that commitment, it's difficult to leave because they have chosen you over someone else, and they're going to have to go through that whole process again. So before you say yes and sign on the dotted line, make sure that you have all the information that you need to know that it's the right fit for you at that moment in time.